Good morning. I want to begin with a question this morning. Does God have many friends or few friends? Does God have many friends or few friends? It's like asking, does the truth have many friends or few friends? I guess you know what the answer is. Now, because your friends, your true friends, are those who will remain with you when everyone abandons you. They will remain in good times and in bad times, in sickness and in health. Your true friends will remain with you. So if we are the true friends of God, then we have to remain with God in good times and in bad times, in poverty and in plenty. We have to remain with God. And Jesus says, remain in me, remain in the Father's love. He says, cut off from me, you can do nothing. I am the vine, my Father is the vine dresser. If you remain in me, I remain in you. And then I make my home in you. You live in me, I live in you. It is in him, in Jesus, we'll live and move and have our being. Now, think about the image of the narrow road in the Bible, and then the image of the broad, wide road in the Bible. Jesus talks about these two roads, and he says that the narrow road leads to life, but the wide, broad road leads to death and destruction. Now, the paradox is that though the narrow road, you have few people who would ply the narrow road, very few people that leads to life. This narrow road that leads to life, but it has few people on it. And then the broad road you've got a lot of people that ply the broad road. So these images go to present to us how challenging it is to follow Jesus. The invitation for us to be his disciples. He says in the gospel of today, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, deny herself, pick up his or her cross and follow me. So we come to see that this narrow road that leads to the narrow gates is the road we have to follow if we have chosen to be the friends of God. And it has to be a choice. It has to be a decision. The decision to follow Jesus, has to be a fundamental decision. It has to be a choice we are making. Why? Because we've looked at other choices in life, and we've seen that this is the most fundamental choice. This is the most important choice. That of all the choices I have in life, I have decided to settle for this one because it is fundamental. It is a choice that determines other choices. It is a choice that actually, should give light to other choices in my life. The choice to follow Jesus. Now, the beauty about the Catholic faith is that it provides us with all the instruments we need to decide on following Jesus. It provides us with the faith. It provides us with the sacrament, with the Word of God. That is why we come to church. The church is equipping us, with all of these, sacraments and the gospel message that we may be able to choose on our own to follow Jesus Christ. Now, it takes a lot of courage and commitment today to be a friend of God. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of courage and commitment today to follow the way of Christ and to ply the narrow road, to remain with God, to be a friend of God against all odds. And this is why it takes a lot of courage and commitment today to be a friend of God, a true friend of God. It is because of us. Some of us could even lose our friends. We could even lose our friends because of the choice to be a friend of God. Some of us could even lose family members. We could even lose our parents or lose our children because of the choice to be a friend of God. That is why it takes courage and commitment, and true devotion for us to be the friends of God today, because it comes with a price. It comes with a price. Some of us could even lose our jobs. There are those who have lost their jobs because they chose the path of honesty, of transparency, of sincerity. And what happened to them? They got fired. They wouldn't want to play the usual game. They wouldn't want to dance to the gallery. What happened to them? They've lost their jobs because they decided to choose the path of truth, of honesty, of sincerity. So that is a pride. Some of us, could have actually begin to experience abandonment, negligence, by our friends because we have decided to follow the path of ethics and to follow the path of principles. So you come to realize, my dear friends, that it takes a lot of courage and commitment, for us to really follow God today. And there could be the tendency, and this is the point, there could be the tendency, for us to be alone, all alone, because we are on the side of God, we are on the side of the truth, we are on the side of principles. We could find ourselves all alone. But we are not alone. We are also on the side of God. So the one who is a friend of God could actually experience abandonment, loneliness, negligence, from others. But at the end of the day, you were standing side by side with God. And you come to see, my dear friends, in the first reading of today, that Jeremiah the prophet was expressing, he was expressing his frustration. He was expressing his, the fact that he was standing all alone by himself as a prophet of God. Because there are those times too that you might even feel tired. Tired because of the fact that, you are just alone by yourself. And you feel like giving up. You feel like just throwing in the towel. You feel like giving up on your faith. You feel like giving up on God because you are just tired to be alone. You're tired of the burden of being a friend of God. You're tired of the burden of being a Christian today in our time. You're tired of the persecution. You are tired of the lies peddled against you. And you are just tired of being a victim of your own honesty, a victim of your own transparency. Jeremiah felt the same way. You could literally hear the frustration in his voice. He turned to God and he said to God, "You duped me. You duped me, God. And I allowed myself to be duped." Those are strong words. You duped me, God, and I allowed myself to be duped. Because he was lamenting. He was lamenting the fact that he was almost alone on the side of God. He was lamenting the fact that, he became an object of mockery. He became a laughingstock before the people. And when he would speak, Jeremiah tells us that he would cry out vengeance, violence, outrage on every side. The lamentation of Jeremiah, my dear friends, could also be our lamentation today. Because, just tell me, how do you preach the gospel today? How do you preach the gospel to a generation that has lost faith in God? We have to begin to look at the context of Jeremiah. That he was preaching to a people that wouldn't even believe in God. He was preaching to a people that wouldn't even, obey the voice of God. So how today, do we preach a gospel to a generation that has lost faith in God? How do we preach the gospel today, the objective truth, to a generation that does not believe in objective truth? And how do we preach about heaven today to a people that do not even believe in heaven? There are those who tell you that it all begins here in this world and it ends in this world. So it is materialism. So Jeremiah, right here in this passage, is literally asking God, why have you put me in this mess? Why have you duped me? Why have you allowed me to go through this persecution? Why have you allowed me to go through this suffering? Why have you deceived me, O God? Why have you put me in this mess? And if you really listen to the voice of Jeremiah, we'll come to see that we could also find ourselves in that condition. I don't know if you've asked God the question before. Why have you allowed me, God, into this mess? Why have you deceived me into this mess? And it could be a relationship. It could be vocation. It could be your profession. It could be marriage. It's like, why? What is going on? Why have you allowed me into this mess? You know, you love it. I mean, you have your passion, the passion for your vocation. You have love for the word of God. You love your friend. You love your marriage. But at the same time, you look at what is happening around you. You are overwhelmed. You are overwhelmed by what is happening in your marriage, by what is happening in your vocation, by what is happening in your office. You love your office. You love your vocation. You love your job. But at the same time, you are overwhelmed by what is happening. You are going through an existential dilemma. That's where Jeremiah found himself. He was experiencing an existential dilemma. He loved the gospel. He loved the word of God. He loved his prophetic ministry. But at the same time, he was going through persecution. So that is why on this day, we have this invitation that the true friends of God will have to arise and to pray for this nation. The true friends of God will have to arise and to speak truth to power. Because to be a friend of God, we have to go back to the cross. He says, if you would want to come after me, deny yourself, pick up your cross and follow me. Self-denial doesn't mean that it doesn't mean we have to hate ourselves. It is not hate for self. It is not to humiliate the self. But self-denial is to recognize that I am not at the center of the universe. That, beyond me is God. Beyond me is the family. Beyond me are others. So I have this invitation to connect myself with those around me. Self-denial is self-control. Because without self-control, we cannot carry the cross. I mean, without self-control, we cannot live the Christian life. I have to control my emotions. I have to control my words. I have to control my reactions. That is exactly the foundation of our Christian life. Self-denial, self-control. And we've come to realize in this gospel, he says, deny yourself and take up your cross. And what is the cross? The cross represents selflessness. So if I have not denied myself, I cannot carry my cross. Because if I have not been able to control myself and control my emotions and control my words and control my reactions, then I will not be able to carry the cross. Because the cross represents selflessness. It represents self-emptying. It represents self-giving. The cross is not selfish. The cross is not self-centered. The cross is selfless. It is the sacrifice, to give up what we have, because we receive a greater good when we give up what we have. So, my dear friends, in this gospel, the invitation to carry the cross, we come to realize that we cannot truly love if we are not selfless. I mean, if we don't carry the cross. I mean, we cannot truly forgive if we do not carry the cross. We cannot truly give if we do not carry the cross. So if we all decide today to become selfish, to become self-centered, what happens? There will be no nation. There will be no family. There will be no church. Because it is all about me, myself, and I. But this invitation to carry the cross is actually in direct opposition to the life of today, to what we see around us today. Because what we see around us today is the enthronement of the self. It's all about the ego. It's all about pride. It's all about me. It's all about what I want. But the cross stands in direct opposition to the standards of the world today. And St. Paul says in the second reading that we are not to conform ourselves to this age, he says, but we are to allow the renewing of our minds to transform us, that we may know what is good and perfect and mature. I'd like to go back to what St. Francis of Assisi says. I mean, if we reflect on his prayer, the prayer of St. Francis, we come to see that it is actually addressing the invitation to carry the cross. So when Jesus says, pick up your cross and follow me, we are to follow him and not Jesus following us. Now we live in a time where people would want God to follow them, but we are called upon to follow God because he knows the end from the beginning and the beginning from the end. And he says, the only way you can follow me today is to be selfless, is to carry the cross, to pick up the cross. It is that life of sacrifice for the sake of others, for the sake of humanity, for the sake of salvation, for the glory of God. Now, this is what the cross means. That in our world, in our time, where there is hate, what does the cross say? The cross brings love. Where there is injury, the cross brings pardon. Where there is doubt, the cross brings faith. Where there is darkness, the cross brings light. Where there is despair, the cross represents hope. Where there is sadness, the cross represents joy. Where there is injustice, the cross represents justice. And so to carry the cross, my dear friends, is to reflect and to carry the banner of joy. It is to be a representative of love. It is to be a reflection of God's justice. It is to be a reflection of God's mercy. It is to be a reflection of God's compassion. That is exactly what the cross means, because it is in giving the cross that we receive from God.